the sad girl. Many years ago, I was a teacher in a small town. I love my job and I love my students very much. Every day, I walked to school with a big smile on my face. The school was small, but it was full of happy children. My class was bright and full of life. We read stories, played games, and learned many new things. But one year, a new girl came in my class. Her name was Emily, and she was very quiet. Emily sat in the last row, far from the other children in class. She never smiled, never laughed, and never talked to anyone. At break time, the children ran and played outside. Emily stayed inside and looked out the window. At lunch, the other girls sat together and shared food, but Emily sat alone and ate nothing. She always looked sad and her eyes looked tired. I watched her for many days, and I saw the same things again and again. Emily was smart, but she never did her homework. She listened in class, but never raised her hand. She wrote well, but never joined the group work. I wanted to help her, but I did not know how. I felt something was wrong, but I was not sure what it was. One day I asked her to stay after class. I said, "Emily, you are smart, but you don't do your work." "Why?" She looked down at the floor. She was quiet for a long time. Then she looked at me. Her eyes were full of tears. She said in a small voice, "I live alone. I don't have a family." My heart felt heavy, and I could not say anything. She told me her story. Her parents died in a car accident 2 years ago. She lived with her aunt, but the aunt was not kind to her. One day the aunt left and never came back. Since then, Emily lived in a small old house by herself. She had no food, no money, and no help. She came to school every day, but no one knew her pain. That night I sat in my room and thought about Emily. I felt very sad and worried. She was just a child and she needed love and care. I knew I had to do something. I could not let her live alone and sad. I looked at the empty room in my house and had an idea. I made a decision in my heart. I would help Emily and give her a new home. The next morning, I waited for her at the school gate. When she came, I smiled and said, "Come with me after school." She looked at me with tired eyes and nodded. All day I watched her. She was still quiet, but I saw something new. There was a small light in her eyes. I think she felt a little hope. After school, we walked together to my house. It was not a big house, but it was warm and safe. I showed her the empty room. I said, "You can stay here if you want." Emily looked around. She touched the bed and the small table. Then she looked at me and smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. It made me feel warm inside. That day changed everything for both of us. Emily came to live with me. I cooked for her, helped her with homework, and gave her love. She started to smile more. She talked a little. She studied and worked hard. I saw her grow and become strong. She was not the sad girl in the last row anymore. She was part of my family. Now the first week with Emily was quiet. She did not speak much, but I saw small changes. She woke up early and helped me set the table. She ate all her food and thanked me with a soft voice. Every evening, she sat at the table and did her homework. I sat beside her and helped when she asked. Slowly, She began to smile more. At school, the other children saw and knew Emily. She still sat in the last row, but now she listened with bright eyes. She raised her hand once in math class. She read aloud in English. The class was surprised, but they clapped for her. Emily looked shy, but I saw her smile again. It was a big moment for her. One day, I gave a class a small art project. They had to draw their home. Some drew big houses, others drew gardens and pets. Emily sat quietly with her pencil. I walked to her desk and looked at her drawing. She drew a small house with 2 chairs and a bed. On the wall, she drew 2 people. One was her and one was me. I looked at the drawing for a long time. I felt tears in my eyes, but I smiled. I said, "This is a beautiful drawing, Emily." She looked up and said, "This is my real home now." I did not say anything. I just touched her hand and gave her a warm smile. That picture stayed in my heart for a long time. Emily began to talk more with the other children. She played with them at break time. She joined a reading group and helped a younger girl with her spelling. She made one good friend named Sarah. They walked home together after school. They laughed and shared snacks. It was nice to see Emily like this at night. Emily sometimes had bad dreams. I heard her cry in her room. I would go and sit beside her bed. She never asked for help, but I stayed with her until she felt safe. Some nights, she asked me to tell her a story. I told her stories about the stars, about animals, or about my own childhood. She listened with big eyes. One evening, she said, "I wish my mom could hear your stories, too." I looked at her and nodded. I said, "Maybe she can. Maybe she is listening right now." Emily smiled, and I saw a tear on her cheek, but it was not a sad tear. It was soft and quiet. That night, she slept without a bad dream. As weeks passed, Emily became one of the top students in class. She worked hard and asked many questions. She helped others and always said kind words. The principal noticed her too. He gave her a special star for good progress. Emily held the star in her hand and looked at me. I smiled and nodded. She was doing so well. I often sat and thought about how much Emily had changed. From a sad, quiet girl with no home to a smiling, brave child who helped others. She had come a long way. But deep inside, I knew this was not the end. Her journey was still going, and I would walk with her every step of the way. The days with Emily became a part of my life. She was not just a student anymore. She was like family to me. Every morning, we ate breakfast together. She made tea and smiled as she passed me the cup. Her voice was soft, but her eyes were bright. She talked about her dreams, her school, and her friend Sarah. I listened to her and felt proud every time. At school, Emily started to help the teacher in little ways. She cleaned the board after class. She passed out books to the other children. When someone looked sad, she sat beside them and talked. Emily was no longer the quiet girl in the corner. She was kind, helpful, and full of light. The children liked her, and so did the teachers. One afternoon, there was a small music show at school. Emily joined the singing group with Sarah. I sat in the front row and waited. When the music started, I saw her standing there. She looked a little shy, but also happy. She sang with the group, and her voice was soft but clear. I smiled the whole time. My heart was full of joy. After the show, Emily ran to me. She hugged me in front of everyone. She said, "Did you hear me sing?" I spoke. "Yes, I did. You were wonderful." She laughed and jumped once. I'd never seen her so happy. That night at home, she sang again while brushing her hair. Her voice filled the small house with peace. Later that week, I got a letter from the school office. It said Emily's aunt was found. She was in another town and wanted to take Emily back. My hand shook as I held the letter. I looked at Emily. She was doing her homework at the table. I sat down and thought for a long time. I didn't know what to do or what to say. That evening, I showed Emily the letter. She read it and was quiet for a while. Then she looked up at me and asked, "Do I have to go?" I looked into her eyes and said, "Only if you want to." She shook her head and said, "I want to stay with you." I felt both sad and happy at the same time. I hugged her tightly. The next day, I went to the school office and talked to the principal. I told him about Emily's life and her time with me. I said I wanted to be her guardian. He listened and said he would help. We filled many papers and waited for a reply. Every night, Emily asked, "Will I stay here?" And every night I said yes. I hope so. Weeks passed. We waited and hoped. Emily stayed brave. She still went to school and helped others, but sometimes I saw her eyes look worried. She didn't talk about the letter, but I knew she was thinking about it. I told her again and again, "You are not alone. I am here. I will fight for you." She smiled and spoke. "I know." Finally, one afternoon, a letter came to our door. My hand shook as I opened it. It said that Emily could stay with me. I read the words twice to be sure. I called Emily and showed her the letter. She read it, looked at me, and started to cry. But they were happy, happy tears. She threw her arms around me and whispered, "Thank you." Life with Emily after that letter felt different. It felt peaceful, like a new beginning for both of us. Emily knew she was safe, and I knew she was happy. Each morning, we opened the windows together and let the sunlight in. She talked more during breakfast and even made jokes. Her laughter filled the room, and my heart felt full of love. At school, Emily became a helper for the younger students. She read to them and played games with them at break time. One little girl named Nora followed Emily everywhere. Emily helped her learn to read and tied her shoes. I watched her from my desk and smiled. Emily was like a big sister now, kind and patient with everyone. One weekend, I took Emily to the library in the next town. She'd never been to a big library before. Her eyes opened wide as she saw all the books. She walked through the rows and touched the shelves gently. She picked 5 books, all about animals and stars. On the way home, she read one aloud to me. Her voice was full of joy. That night she sat on the floor and kept reading. She read each page slowly and carefully. Sometimes she laughed and showed me a picture. I sat with her, feeling proud. Emily, the girl who once said, "Nothing now told stories," with a shining smile. She even made her own little book with drawings and short lines about a dog. One day, Emily came home from school with a paper in her hand. She had written a small story, and her teacher gave her a gold star. She showed me the paper and said, "I want to be a writer." I smiled and spoke. "You already are." She laughed and hugged me. That paper stayed on our wall for many weeks. We started a new weekend routine. Every Saturday morning, we went to the park with books and a snack. Emily read on the bench while I drank tea. Sometimes she asked me questions about words. Sometimes she just sat in silence and looked at the sky. Those quiet times were special. They were full of peace and trust. One evening it rained very hard. The power went out and the house was dark. Emily sat close to me and said, "Let's tell stories." I lit a candle and we took turns making up silly tales. We laughed until we cried. Later, as she fell asleep, she whispered, "This is my favorite home." I touched her hair and felt lucky. A few days later, the principal asked me to speak at a school event. I told a story about a girl who found hope. I did not say her name, but everyone knew it was Emily. Emily sat in the front row, holding Sarah's hand. When I finished, she stood up and clapped first. I looked at her and smiled. She smiled back with proud eyes that night. Emily said, "You told my story," I said. "Yes, because your story is beautiful." She nodded and looked out the window. The stars were bright and the sky was clear. She spoke, "I'm not sad anymore." I held her hand and said, "I know you are strong now." And we sat there together, quiet and happy. One morning, Emily woke up early and said, "I want to bake a cake." It was a cold day, but the kitchen felt warm with her in it. We found a simple recipe and followed it step by step. Emily broke the eggs, mixed the flour, and poured the batter. The smell of the cake filled the house. When it was ready, she took a bite and smiled wide. At school that week, Emily gave a small speech in class. The teacher had asked each student to talk about someone special. Emily talked about me. She said, "I gave her a home, a safe place and love." The whole class listened in silence. When she finished, everyone clapped. I wasn't there, but the teacher told me later. I felt proud. That weekend, Sarah came to our house for the first time. Emily was excited. She cleaned her room, made lemonade, and drew a welcome sign. The two girls played games, told stories, and laughed all afternoon. Later, Sarah said, "You're lucky, Emily." Emily looked at me and said, "I know." My heart felt full again. The seasons changed and winter came. Emily loved the cold. She ran in the yard wearing a red scarf. We made snow angels and built a snowman with a carrot nose. At night, we drank hot chocolate and read books by the heater. Emily wrote a story called The Snow Girl. It was about a girl who found joy in winter. One day, Emily found an old photo in a book. It was a picture of my younger self standing with my parents. She looked at it for a long time. Then she asked, "Were you ever sad like me?" I said yes. I told her about the time I lost my mother. She held my hand and said, "I'm glad we found each other." I told me too. At school, Emily's teacher asked her to join a writing contest. She wrote a story called My New Beginning. It was about a girl who had no family, no home, and no voice. But then she met a kind teacher, and her world changed. Emily won first prize. When she read her story on stage, her hand shook, but her voice was strong. When we got home that day, I hung her prize on the wall. Emily looked at it and said, "This wall is full now." I said, "Yes, full of your stories, your dreams, and your smile." She laughed and added one more drawing to the wall. It was a picture of us holding hands, standing under a big tree. The sun was shining behind us. One evening we sat in the living room with the lights off. A storm had cut the power again. Emily sat close and asked, "Do you think my real parents would be proud?" I looked at her and said, "I know they would." She didn't speak after that, but she rested her head on my arm. We sat like that for a long time, just listening to the rain. Later that night, Emily wrote something in her small notebook. She showed it to me. It said, "This house is not just a house. It is my home, my heart, and my happy place." I didn't know what to say. I just hugged her tight and whispered, "You are my happy place too." And in that moment, we both knew it was true. Spring came and flowers bloomed in the yard. Emily planted seeds near the fence. Every morning, she checked the soil and watered them with care. One day, small green leaves appeared. Emily jumped with joy. She named each plant and talked to them softly. I watched her and thought, she has grown like these flowers, slowly, gently, and beautifully. At school, Emily helped organize a small event. It was for new students who felt shy or scared. She stood at the door and welcomed them. She smiled and said kind words. One little boy was crying, and Emily knelt beside him. She spoke. "I was like you once. It gets better." The boy stopped crying and held her hand tightly. One afternoon, we went to a field outside town. Emily brought her notebook and a kite. She ran across the field with the kite flying high. Then she sat and wrote for a long time. I asked her what she was writing. She said, "I'm writing about today. I want to remember this feeling forever." I smiled and told me too. That evening, Emily showed me her new story. It was about a bird with broken wings who learned to fly again. She said, "This bird is me." I hugged her and said, "Yes, and now you're flying higher every day." She smiled and leaned on my shoulder. We watched the sky turn pink as the sun went down. It was a perfect end to the day. Later that week, I looked at the wall full of Emily's papers. Each one told a part of her journey. I saw her first drawing, her first story, her gold star, and her notes of hope. I realized we had built something special, something no one could ever take away. A home made of love, trust, and small moments that changed our lives. One rainy Sunday, Emily baked cookies and wrote a letter. It was for her future self. She wrote, "Dear Emily, remember how far you've come. You are strong. You are loved. You are home." She folded the paper and hid it inside a book. She spoke. "I'll read it one day when I forget," I said, "and I'll remind you every day." Emily continued to grow. She made more friends and became a leader in her class. Her confidence grew with every passing day. She was no longer the sad girl who felt lost. Now she was strong, kind, and full of dreams. I watched her and knew that she would go far in life. Her future was bright and her heart was full of hope. Now, when I think about Emily, I smile. She is not just a student, she is a part of me. Her story became my story too. She showed me that love can grow in quiet places, and even the saddest hearts can heal with time. Life gave me a gift I never asked for, but one I will never let go. Emily changed everything. She changed me. It's a good way to practice English every day. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories.